golden child sister got me banned from Christmas, then asked me for money. You won't believe how I finally put her in her place and then... My name is Eric, and I'm 34 years old. I've been working in tech for the past 10 years, and I live in Milwaukee. From the outside, my life probably looks good. Stable job, no major financial worries, and a decent place downtown. But if you look closer, you'd see what's been pulling me down for as long as I can remember. My family. Don't get me wrong. I love my parents, Janet and Peter, and my younger sister, Olivia, who's 27 now. But love doesn't make it any easier to deal with the endless demands, the emotional manipulation, and the constant feeling that I'm more of a resource than a person to them. Somehow, I became the one they rely on for everything, especially financially. It's not like there was a big family meeting where they decided I'd be the responsible one. It just kind of happened. Maybe it's because I'm the oldest, or maybe it's because Olivia has always been their golden child. Whatever the reason, the role stuck, and I've been playing it ever since. Growing up, it was clear Olivia was the favorite. She was charming, bubbly, and knew exactly how to make everyone adore her. Meanwhile, I was the quiet, serious one. I didn't need much, or so they assumed. When Olivia turned 16, they decided she needed a car. Not wanted, needed. Our parents couldn't afford anything decent, so they came to me. I had been working part-time at a hardware store and saving for college. Eric, my mom had said, her voice filled with that coaxing tone she used when she wanted something. You've done such a great job saving up. Don't you think it'd be nice to help your sister out? She's just starting to drive, and it's important for her to have something reliable. I wasn't thrilled about it, but what could I say? They made it sound like I'd be letting the family down if I didn't help. So I dipped into my savings, and Olivia got her car. It wasn't anything fancy, just a used sedan, but she acted like it was a brand new luxury vehicle. Thanks, Eric, she'd said, flashing her signature grin. You're the best. For a moment, it felt good to help. But looking back, I realized that was just the beginning of a long pattern. When Olivia got accepted to an expensive private college out of state, my parents were thrilled. They couldn't afford it, of course, but that didn't stop them from encouraging her to go. We'll figure it out, my dad had said. This is a big opportunity for her. Figuring it out meant asking me to delay grad school. Eric, you're doing so well, my mom said during one of their many pitches. And Olivia has worked so hard to get into this school. Don't you think it's worth it to help her succeed? We're family, after all. Olivia played her part perfectly. Eric, I promise I'll make it up to you one day, she said, her voice filled with sincerity. I just want to make something of myself. I ended up giving in again. I told myself it was fine because I wasn't struggling financially. I could afford to wait a little longer for grad school. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The years passed, and the requests kept coming. By the time Olivia got married 3 years ago, I'd lost count of how many times I'd bailed her out. She wanted her dream wedding, complete with everything from a designer dress to an open bar. My parents couldn't afford all the extras, so they turned to me. Eric, my dad said over the phone one evening, it's just a little bit for the flowers. You don't want Olivia to be disappointed on her big day, do you? It wasn't even a question. It was a declaration. Eric, you're paying for this? I don't know why I kept saying yes. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe I just didn't want to deal with the fallout of saying no. Either way, I kept stepping up, covering the gaps, and keeping the peace. It felt like the right thing to do because, well, we're family. Aren't families supposed to look out for each other? But the truth is, it started to wear on me. No matter how much I helped, it was never enough. My parents constantly found ways to remind me of what I wasn't doing. Namely, settling down, getting married, and giving them grandkids. Oh, Eric, my mom would say at every holiday gathering, you're not getting any younger, you know? We're still holding out hope for those grandbabies. Meanwhile, Olivia could show up at Thanksgiving with some new crisis in her life, and they'd praise her for just showing up. It didn't matter if she was struggling financially or had dropped out of another class. They were proud of her simply because she was Olivia. It wasn't just the favoritism. It was the expectation that I would always step up, no questions asked. If I hesitated or said no, it wasn't just a disappointment. It was a betrayal. Eric, don't you care about your family? My mom would ask. You're doing so well. Why can't you just help out? That guilt trip never failed. And Olivia? She was a master at playing the victim. Anytime I pushed back, she'd turn it into a sob story about how hard her life was. I'm just trying to get by, she'd say. I don't have the kind of stability you do. My parents ate it up every time. And me? I was left feeling like the bad guy. Looking back now, I don't know how I let it go on for so long. I was so used to being the one who kept everything running smoothly that I didn't even notice how much it was costing me. Not just financially, but emotionally. But Olivia? She finally went too far. And when she did, it was like something inside me snapped. It was about a week before Christmas when everything came to a head. At the time, I was gearing up for the holidays, mentally preparing for the usual mix of small talk, subtle digs from my parents, and Olivia's never-ending crises. I hadn't decided what to get my parents yet, but I was browsing online for ideas and even considered something nice for Olivia and her husband, Greg. Then, my phone rang. It was my mom. I didn't think much of it. Her calling before the holidays was normal, and I figured it would be about the Christmas dinner plans or some last-minute request. But as soon as I answered, I knew something was off. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice overly sweet. That was her tell, the tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news or ask for a favor. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I replied, waiting for whatever was coming. We made small talk for a minute, and then she dropped it. "Listen, Eric," she said, dragging out the words like she was trying to soften the blow. "We've been thinking, maybe it's best if you don't come to Christmas this year." At first, I thought I'd misheard her. "Wait, what?" I asked. "Why wouldn't I come to Christmas?" There was a pause. "Well," she began, "Olivia mentioned some things you've said recently, and we just don't want any negativity ruining the day." "Negativity?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice calm. "What are you talking about? What did Olivia say?" Mom hesitated, like she wasn't sure if she should tell me. Then she sighed. "She told us you've been saying some pretty hurtful things about Christmas. That you hate spending money on gifts for the family and think our gatherings are a waste of time because they're all about her." I was stunned. Not only was that a blatant lie, but the fact that my mom believed it without even asking me about it hit harder than I expected. This wasn't the first time Olivia had twisted things to make herself look good and me look bad, but it felt like a new low. "Are you serious?" I said, my voice rising. "I never said anything like that." "Well," Mom replied, sounding unsure. "Olivia seemed pretty upset about it. She said you've been talking to people about how much you don't like our Christmases and how they're not worth your time." My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Mom, I don't know what Olivia told you, but I never said anything like that. In fact, I've been planning what to get you and Dad for Christmas for weeks." She hesitated again, and I could tell she didn't want to argue. "We just think it's better if you sit this one out," she said. "You've seemed a little distant lately, and we don't want any tension during the holidays." At that moment, I realized there was no point in arguing. Mom had already made up her mind, and nothing I said would change it. "Fine," I said, keeping my tone short. "If that's what you want." She sounded surprised that I wasn't fighting her on it. "It's not about what we want, honey. We just think it's for the best." "Sure," I said, unable to hide the sarcasm. "Merry Christmas, Mom." Then I hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone. I wasn't even angry, just tired. Tired of always being the one who had to explain himself, the one who had to defend himself against Olivia's lies. No matter what I did, I was always the bad guy in her story. The next day, Olivia called. At first, I didn't even want to answer. I figured she was calling to gloat about how she'd gotten me uninvited, but a part of me was curious. So, I picked up. "Hey, Eric," she said, her voice as cheerful as ever, like nothing had happened. "What do you want, Olivia?" I said, not bothering to pretend I was happy to hear from her. She didn't acknowledge my tone. "So, listen," she began. "I need a little help. My grad school tuition is due soon, and Mom and Dad can't really afford to help much right now. I was hoping you could pitch in." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious?" I said. "You just got me uninvited to Christmas, and now you're asking me for money?" There was a pause, like she hadn't expected me to bring that up. "Oh, come on, Eric, she said, her tone light and dismissive. That's not what this is about. Christmas is one thing, but this is important. It's my education. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. Olivia, do you even hear yourself? You lied to Mom and Dad about me, got me kicked out of Christmas, and now you want me to pay for your tuition? Do you even care how messed up that sounds? She sighed, like I was the one being difficult. Eric, don't be so dramatic. Mom and Dad just wanted a peaceful Christmas, and you've been kind of negative lately. Besides, this isn't about Christmas. It's about helping your family. There it was. The guilt trip. The same tactic she'd used 1,000 times before. I was supposed to forget everything she'd done and swoop in to save the day because that's what family does, right? I'll think about it, I said, cutting her off before she could go any further. She seemed satisfied with that. Great. Thanks, Eric. I knew I could count on you. After she hung up, I sat there, staring at my phone. The audacity was mind-blowing. Not only had she managed to turn my own family against me, but now she had the nerve to ask me for money like nothing had happened. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about Christmas or tuition. This was about years of being taken for granted, years of being expected to step up while Olivia coasted through life with a smile and a sob story. For the first time, I wasn't just frustrated. I was done. After Olivia's call, I couldn't stop replaying the situation in my head. It wasn't just her audacity. It was the pattern that had been there my entire life. This time, though, it felt different. It felt final. I decided that I wasn't going to let this one slide. The day after her call, I picked up my phone and called my mom. She answered on the second ring. Hi, honey, she said, her voice wary, like she already knew this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Hi, Mom, I replied, cutting straight to the point. We need to have a family meeting. Me, you, Dad, Olivia, and Greg. Tomorrow evening. There was a pause. Eric, is this really necessary? It's so close to Christmas, and I don't want any more tension. It's absolutely necessary, I said firmly. I just got uninvited to Christmas because of something Olivia said that isn't true. We're going to talk about it. She hesitated again, but eventually she relented. Fine, tomorrow at 6. But Eric, please don't make this a big thing. It's the holidays and we just want peace. Peace, I repeated. That's funny, considering I'm the one who got kicked out of Christmas. Without waiting for her to respond, I hung up. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' house, a modest 2-story home in the suburbs. It used to feel like home, but over the years, it had become more like a battlefield, a place where I was constantly fighting to prove my worth. I didn't bother dressing up. Jeans and a hoodie were good enough for this circus. When I walked in, Olivia and Greg were already there. Greg gave me his usual awkward nod, the one that said he didn't want to be involved in any of this. Olivia didn't even look up from her phone. Hi, Eric, my mom said, forcing a smile as she carried a tray of coffee and cookies into the living room. We were just getting settled. Great, I said flatly. Let's get started. Dad was in his recliner, arms crossed and already looking like he blamed me for whatever was about to happen. I ignored him and took a seat across from Olivia, who finally looked up, her expression a mix of fake innocence and mild annoyance. So, Mom began after a moment of awkward silence. What did you want to talk about, Eric? I didn't waste time. This is about Christmas and the fact that I wasn't invited because of something Olivia said that isn't true. Olivia rolled her eyes. Oh my God, are you still on that? She said, her tone dripping with annoyance. I didn't lie. That's what you said, or at least how it came across. Really? I said, pulling out my phone. Because I have the texts to prove otherwise. Her smug expression faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. Texts? She said, her voice defensive. Yeah, I replied, scrolling through my messages. Remember when I asked you what I should get Mom and Dad for Christmas? This was 2 weeks ago. I opened the conversation and handed my phone to Mom. Here's me asking Olivia for gift ideas, I said. And I quote, I don't care about the cost. I just want to get them something meaningful. Mom's face softened as she read the message, but before she could say anything, I continued. And here's Olivia's response. I pointed to the next message. Why waste money on gifts? They don't even appreciate it half the time. I let that sink in for a moment before adding, so tell me again, Olivia, how I'm the one who hates Christmas and doesn't want to spend money on gifts. The room went silent. Mom looked up at Olivia, her expression confused. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, like he didn't know how to process what he was hearing. Olivia, on the other hand, doubled down. Oh, come on, she said, crossing her arms. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. I didn't mean it like that. Didn't mean it like what? I shot back. You told Mom and Dad lies about me. Meanwhile, you're the one complaining about how much gifts cost and saying they don't appreciate it anyway. She glared at me, but I could see the cracks in her confidence. It's not a big deal, Eric. You're overreacting. I turned to my mom. Am I overreacting? Because you believed her without even asking me about it. You kicked me out of Christmas based on her word alone. Mom opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She looked at Dad, probably hoping he'd back her up, but he just sat there, arms crossed, staring at the floor. Olivia wasn't done yet. She shifted in her seat, her arms crossed, but there was a calculated look in her eyes now. I'd seen it 100 times before. It was the look she gave right before turning everything around to make herself the victim. Okay, fine, Olivia said, throwing her hands up. Yes, I said that. But do you want to know why? Because I've been under so much pressure lately, and it's been really hard to keep up with everything. I'm barely holding it together as it is, and now you're dragging me through the mud in front of everyone just to make yourself look better. Mom's face softened immediately, and I could see Dad's scowl deepen. Olivia, Mom said gently, what do you mean, honey? What's been so hard? Olivia sniffed dramatically, as if she were on the verge of tears. Grad school, for one thing, she said, her voice wavering just enough to sell it. And you know Greg and I are still trying to pay off the wedding. Plus, everything is so expensive now. Groceries, rent, everything. It's not like I have someone swooping in to save the day for me. I'm doing the best I can. She glanced at me as she said that last part, like I was the one who'd somehow failed her. I rolled my eyes. You've got to be kidding me, Olivia. You literally asked me for thousands of dollars yesterday. You don't get to play the I have no support card when you've been leaning on me and Mom and Dad for years. That's enough. Eric, Dad barked, his voice loud enough to make everyone jump. I stared at him, stunned. Enough? I said, my voice rising. Dad, she's the one who lied about me. She's the one who caused this whole mess. But somehow I'm the bad guy for calling her out. Yes, you are, Mom said firmly, her voice laced with disappointment. Because instead of trying to understand where Olivia is coming from, you've spent this whole time attacking her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I've been supporting this family for years, and this is how you repay me. The silence that followed was deafening. That meeting at my parents' house was the last straw. For years, I had swallowed my frustration, told myself it wasn't worth the fight, and kept my head down to keep the peace. But sitting there, watching Olivia spin her web of excuses while my parents ate it up, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to play along anymore. Here's what's going to happen, I said, breaking the suffocating silence in the room. My voice was steady, but I could feel the weight of my words. If you really think I should pay for Olivia's tuition, despite her disrespect, her lies, and years of entitlement, fine. I'll do it. But make no mistake, this is the last time. Everyone stared at me, wide-eyed. Olivia's mouth opened slightly, her practiced composure faltering for the first time all night. What do you mean, last time? Mom asked, her voice tinged with panic. I mean exactly what it sounds like, I replied. Once I send that money, I'm done. No more tuition. No more wedding expenses. No more bailing anyone out. And no more family holidays if I'm not respected. I'm stepping back, and I'm not coming back until you start treating me like a person, not an ATM. Eric, Dad said, his tone sharp and scolding. That's uncalled for. We're family, and family doesn't walk away when things get tough. I turned to him, meeting his gaze. You're right, Dad. Family doesn't walk away. But you've been walking away from me for years. Every time you've let Olivia lie, manipulate, and coast through life while I've picked up the pieces you've been walking away. I'm just finally calling it what it is. Mom's voice broke as she spoke. You don't mean this. You're just upset right now. We've always appreciated everything you've done for us, Eric. Maybe we haven't said it enough, but you know how much we care. Do I? I shot back. Because it doesn't feel that way when I'm excluded from Christmas without so much as a conversation. It doesn't feel that way when you believe Olivia's lies without asking for my side of the story. And it definitely doesn't feel that way when the only time you call me is when you need something. Olivia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. You're blowing this way out of proportion, she said, her tone defensive. I didn't lie, Eric. I just told them how it felt. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. How it felt. I repeated, incredulous. You told Mom and Dad I said things I never said. You got me uninvited to Christmas based on nothing but your feelings. And now you expect me to fund your education like nothing happened? Her cheeks flushed, and for the first time, she didn't have a quick comeback. Look, I said, my tone firm but calm. I'm not here to argue anymore. I'm here to make it clear where I stand. I'll send the money for your tuition, Olivia, but after that, I'm done. No more financial help. No more guilt trips. No more walking on eggshells to keep this family together. If that means I'm the bad guy, so be it. The room was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. My parents looked at each other, clearly at a loss for how to respond. Olivia opened her mouth like she was about to say something, but I cut her off. And just so we're clear, I added, if anyone tries to guilt me into changing my mind, you'll get the same answer. No. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. As I reached the foyer, my mom called after me. Eric, wait, she said, her voice trembling. Can we at least talk about this? Please. I turned back, looking at the three of them. Olivia was fuming silently, Greg awkwardly stared at the floor, and my dad's face was an unreadable mask. We've already talked, I said. Now it's your turn to decide how you want to move forward. Let me know when you figure it out. With that, I walked out and didn't look back. That night, I sent the payment for Olivia's tuition, along with a brief email. No explanations, no pleasantries, just the receipt and confirmation that the balance was paid. It felt strange, almost surreal, to hit send on what I knew would be my final act of financial support for my family. For years, I had been their safety net, the one who swooped in to save the day without complaint. But this time was different. This time, I was stepping away for good. The silence from my family in the following days was deafening. No calls, no texts, no emails. At first, I thought they might finally be taking me seriously. But deep down, I knew better. This was their way of waiting me out, hoping I'd cave and come crawling back like I always had before. But I wasn't going to cave. The first sign of a crack came on Christmas Eve. My mom sent me a message. Eric, we miss you. Please call when you can. I didn't respond. On Christmas Day, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Olivia. The message was a single sentence. I hope you're happy with yourself. I ignored it. For the first time in years, I spent Christmas on my own terms. No frantic phone calls about last-minute gifts. No awkward family dinners filled with tension and unspoken grievances. Just peace and quiet. I went for a walk that morning, breathing in the crisp winter air and marveling at how light I felt. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. When I got home, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the snow fall. It wasn't the kind of Christmas I'd grown up with, but it was exactly what I needed. Christmas came and went, and for the first time in years, it wasn't a whirlwind of guilt, chaos, and unspoken resentment. Instead, it was quiet, peaceful. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe without the constant weight of family expectations crushing me. The day after Christmas, my mom called. I hesitated before picking up. Part of me didn't want to deal with it, but another part of me was curious to see what she had to say. Hi, Eric, she said, her voice a little too cheerful. How was your Christmas? It was good, I replied simply. How was yours? It was nice, she said after a pause. Quiet. We missed you. I didn't bite. I'm sure it was fine, I said. Is there something you needed? There was a long pause, and then she sighed. I guess I just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling. Things have been tense lately. Tense? I repeated, my tone flat. Mom, I got uninvited to Christmas. I'd say tense is putting it lightly. She hesitated again, then sighed. I know, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know how we got here. I hate seeing the family like this. Do you? I asked, my voice calm but firm, because it feels like this has been building for years. I've just finally decided I'm not going to keep playing along. There was another pause, and I could almost hear her trying to figure out how to respond. Eric, you know we love you, right? We've always appreciated everything you've done for us. Have you? I countered. Because it doesn't feel like that when I'm treated like the family ATM, or when you believe Olivia's lies without even asking for my side of the story. Her voice softened. We didn't mean to make you feel that way. We've always thought of you as the dependable one, the strong one. Maybe we relied on you more than we should have. I let out a slow breath. It's not just about relying on me, Mom. It's about respect. It's about boundaries. And it's about the fact that every time I've tried to stand up for myself, I've been made to feel like the bad guy. I'm done with that. There was a long silence before she finally spoke. If that's how you feel, we'll respect your decision. I hope this doesn't mean we're losing you. You're not losing me, I said. But I'm not going back to the way things were either. If you want me in your life, it has to be on equal terms. No more guilt trips, no more manipulations, and no more treating me like I'm only valuable when I'm fixing things for everyone else. Her voice was quiet when she replied. I understand, Eric. I really do. And I'm sorry if we've hurt you. We never meant to. I appreciate that, I said. But words aren't enough this time. Things have to change, or I'm not going to stick around. She didn't argue, which surprised me. Okay, she said finally. Merry Christmas, Eric. Merry Christmas, Mom. I replied before hanging up. I wasn't sure if she really understood, but it felt good to say my piece. Olivia was next. She didn't call or text right away, which was surprising. I figured she'd be the first to reach out, either to guilt me into helping her with something else or to spin the situation in her favor. When she finally did reach out, it wasn't a call or a text. It was an email. It was long, way too long. She filled it with flowery language about how sorry she was for the misunderstanding and how much she appreciated everything I'd done for her over the years. She said she hoped we could move past this and rebuild our bond. At first, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to call her out for the obvious manipulation, while another part of me wanted to ignore it altogether. In the end, I decided not to respond at all. It wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about protecting myself. That email was just another attempt to keep me on the hook, and I wasn't falling for it. Over the next few weeks, my parents sent me random texts asking about things they'd never cared about before. How my job was going, if I needed anything, stuff like that. It was obvious they were feeling the gap I'd left. They'd gotten so used to me being the one who fixed everything that they didn't know what to do without me. Olivia, from what I heard through a mutual friend, was struggling. She was complaining about how she didn't know how she'd manage without my financial support. Hearing that didn't make me feel good exactly, but it did reinforce that I'd made the right decision. For years, I'd been the one propping up my family, and they'd never appreciated it. Now, they were finally realizing what it meant not to have me around. As for me, life felt lighter. I wasn't constantly checking my phone, dreading the next request or demand. I wasn't juggling their expectations, their problems, or their constant need for me to step up. For the first time in years, I was living for myself. I spent New Year's Eve with a small group of friends, celebrating quietly but happily. We toasted to new beginnings, and for the first time, I actually felt like I had one. In the weeks that followed, I started reconnecting with parts of my life I'd neglected for years. I took up running again, something I hadn't done since college. I started reading for pleasure instead of stress relief. I even went on a few dates, something I'd put off for far too long because I was always too drained by family drama to focus on my own happiness. Do I miss my family? Not in the way you'd think. I don't miss the chaos, the guilt trips, or the constant pressure to be the responsible one. What I miss is the idea of having a family that genuinely supports and respects each other. But I've come to accept that the family I have isn't capable of that. And that's okay. Setting boundaries wasn't easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was being too harsh, or if I should just go back to keeping the peace. But looking back, I know it was the right thing to do. I'm no longer the family ATM, the scapegoat, or the problem solver. I'm just Eric. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough.